and welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. Joining us today, my buddy and friend, interventionist and sober companion, Shauna McKenna Vick. How you doing, Shauna?
I'm great, Damon. Boy, that's an awesome intro. I love that, my buddy and friend. I was just thinking when we were chatting before we started is that we need to speak more often because we have so much to chat about when we finally get together to record that we spend 15 20 minutes just getting caught up. So we'll have to make time for that, to chat a bit more outside of doing our podcast.
Absolutely. Recovery is all about connections. It's all about making friends. It's that support group. Yes. You're part of my support group. Mm-hmm. And I always love chatting with you. I know you've been going through a lot of stuff in your life right now. A lot of changes. I think you're even coming from a remote location right now, aren't you?
I am coming from a remote location. My parents' basement, the basement in the house that I grew up in. My dad has had 2 back-to-back knee replacement surgeries. So I came up to care for him and be of service. And it's been a really special time. He's 86 years old. So to be able to be with him through his recovery and, to be full of gratitude. I hadn't been up here in 4 or 5 years. And the last time was in the middle of my relapse. And in this basement, I was hiding out, drinking bottles of vodka. Who knew that 5 years later, I'd be sitting here doing a Recovered Life podcast. So I'm really grateful to be in the place I am today, because had I continued down that path, I may not even be here. I was on a really bad path. So I'm grateful to be here. And it's a little chilly. It's in Toronto, Canada. So a little chilly, but not too cold yet.
Well, see, now you've made the show international, Shauna, so our value has gone up immensely. So thank you very much. And welcome to all of our Canadian listeners. I know we have a lot of Canadian listeners. So I love that, with everything that's going on in your life right now, we were chatting about the whole 12-step process and about, how to find that really good 12-step home group. And I have to tell you, and I shared with you right up front and to all the listeners, I'm very open about my recovery process. And, right. I've struggled with 12-step groups sometimes, and I've had a hard time finding a 12-step home group, and it's been kind of a struggle for me. I've clicked in sometimes, and I found right ones that have worked for a period of time, and then for whatever reason, they've fallen apart, or I've had to move on from them. But I wanted to go over this with you, Shauna, because as an interventionist and sober companion, you're dealing with people in early recovery, and you're helping them get into the whole 12-step thing. Let's talk about this. What do you tell them in the ways in which to pick a home group? Like, how do you do this?
So I think the most important thing, not the most important thing, but the first step is to figure out how to find a home group. Damon, it's like, okay, you want me to have a home group or you want me to go to meetings. So where do I even look? Right. And I think I can weave in my experience here in Toronto because I wanted to go to meetings while I was up here. And so I actually use an app called Meeting Guide. Well, that's just my phone, but it's an app called Meeting Guide. And you can actually search on the types of meetings. So, I would give them the resources to say, okay, depending on what town we were in, we'd sit down and look up the local AA chapter, because right now, because of COVID, or having been because of COVID, almost everyone's online, everyone's meetings are listed online, and it will say if it's an online meeting or an in-person meeting. So go to the local AA. I'm from Raleigh normally, or I live in Raleigh, so it's raleighaa.com, and it lists all of the meetings in that district. And then Meeting Guide, Meeting Guide is great for traveling because you pull it up and it has, directions. It has the type of meeting. We'll get into that, how to look for what types of meetings. But you can click and filter on it, a big book meeting, a newcomer meeting, a step meeting, 12 steps and 12 traditions. So you can actually even filter on those and, there are other things to look for when looking for a group or home group, because you're not just going to go to your home group, because your home group may only have one meeting a week. You're going to have to go to other meetings. So how do you support your recovery? How do you find the real great groups? And I think what I have done, what the groups that have had the most value for me have been the ones that are really solution focused. Okay, so how do I find that? Usually I look for a big book group, a closed discussion group, a literature-based meeting, because if it's a literature-based meeting, then it's going to be approved literature. I'm speaking specifically for AA as a 12-step program, but there's many other 12-step fellowships out there that are terrific. Like Cocaine Anonymous, CA, is not just for, they take everybody, and their book is, they use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They don't change anything in it. So it's a really solid foundation. But I look for groups that are big book groups that are closed discussions. Sometimes I'll look specifically for a women's meeting.
Shauna, to jump in here, I think one of the things that you
yes, please, because I've been talking for like a minute and a half.
I think that's really good that so the first thing you have to do is to really show up, because I think a lot of times in our head, right? And I know this in recovery, especially early recovery, there's so much going on. We overthink things so much, and we want to find the right perfect group. We might have even had a bad experience. I know a lot of people who've had not a great experience with their first couple meetings, so they want to try to find something, but they don't. They're kind of immobilized and they don't show up. So if you don't show up, you can't find the right meeting, right? Like just right. to highlight that, if you don't take a risk and actually go out and actually go to different meetings, you're not going to find the right meeting.
No, you're not. You have to. And, I know people that default to, well, I'll just go to an online meeting. I'll just go to an online meeting. And online meetings are great. My home group is an online meeting. It started during COVID, and it's at 6:30 in the morning, and it really fits well with my schedule. But I supplement with in-person meetings, because this is a we program. Our program, we need the fellowship. We need to be around other people. The coffee before, coffee after, chatting, going out for lunch, going out for a coffee, getting together with groups of people, getting to know people in the fellowship and building those relationships and those bridges. We need the support of our fellows. So exclusively going to online meetings isn't what I would recommend. I really think the fellowship is important, because when we've stopped drinking, many of us have lost our drinking buddies and our friends and our social outlet as well. And we really need, and AA is based on unity, so group unity. The base is the recovery, and then the fellowship and service. And it's really important to be able to do all three.
I think one of the things, it's like, what do people look for? Because I know, people will ask me all the time. And I get calls from, therapists, interventionists like you, say, oh, I have somebody that's in LA. What meeting should they go to, or what should they look for right in LA? And I think it's the same thing every time, like, especially when you're new, if you go into a 12-step meeting, an AA meeting, an NA meeting, and you're in there and, no one talks to you and no one knows you, I think that's a pretty good sign that probably it's not a very strong group, because I know from being involved and help from a leadership standpoint in bigger 12-step groups, it was very rare that we would let anyone come in that we don't know, that we didn't, at least several people didn't go up to and say hello and introduce themselves, right? Like, so I think that's a big sign. Like, if you're there and no one says hello to you, right? And no one addresses you, right? Go to another group, right? I mean, wouldn't you say that? Because I think one of the things that keeps people away are people's personalities. Like, people, like, I know I have not gone to groups that I should have gone to because I didn't like some of the people that were there. And that was a mistake for me, because after I got to know them, I ended up becoming very good friends with them.
And I think, I'll ask you this, Damon, did they reach out and say hello to you when you came into that group?
Yeah, because my view, Shauna, is you know, especially AA, which I could speak to, like for 12 steps. And this is anyone who's out there that's listening to this that has time or is new can relate to this in different ways. I feel that like with people who have been in 12-step programs for a long time, many times your home group experience shifts to being of service. It's more about being of service with your home group than it is actually you're getting stuff there. So, for example, for me, I've always been the type that, I've had a home group when I was really doing, I'd have a home group and I might not have gotten what I needed out of that. I might go to a group where I'm just one of a billion people sitting there because I need to maybe more receive information. And I don't want to really be in a position where I have to make sure that the dues are collected and the coffee's made and you know what I mean? And that we have a leader.
You're participating.
Yeah, exactly. Then I'm participating. So for me, it's always been about how do I build the perfect ensemble of meetings? And online, I think, is one of those too. I mean, what's your tip on that? Like, what do you do as far as personalities go? Because I know this is a big one that people are going to say. It's like, I love the group, but I hate the people.
Yeah. And I'm in a few online, private online Facebook groups of people who have various different addictions. And they'll say, well, I tried AA. Okay, what does that mean, right? You went to a meeting, and like you said, people can be turned off by personalities. For me, my own experience was, I remember the first time this is 100 years ago, when I first went to an AA meeting, and I went to the same one because it was close to my house. It was convenient. I was living in Dallas at the time. And I went to a meeting and I went there 3 times. And no one said hi to me 3 times in a row. I never went back. I never went back. I didn't stay in AA at that time. I went out, did a little more drinking. And then I went to a different meeting. And I went to a different meeting. And when, it is daunting enough to walk down that hallway to an AA meeting. What you want is someone to be there at the end of the hallway saying, hi, welcome, come in. And that, in many groups, the greeter is a service position. And so people, like you said, are doing service and they're there to welcome you. And then other people, they're not just chatting amongst themselves. They're there to be the hand of AA, because the responsibility statement says, whenever someone reaches out, I'm not saying it perfectly, but I'll be the hand of AA, right? If someone's reaching out and coming to a new meeting, a newcomer, then they're reaching out for help, and we need to respond in kind and welcome them in. So it's, as you said, it denotes the health of a group from a service perspective. If everything's working together, unity, service, fellowship, and recovery, usually groups that are strong in service are also strong in recovery, because service comes out of recovery. Recovery is the basic thing. So I went to a different meeting in Dallas. Then months later, after I decided, oh yeah, no, I really need to find it. And these women were so welcoming, and they gave me their list of phone numbers, and they told me they go out for lunch after the Tuesday meeting and they go for dinner before the Thursday meeting. And so they had fellowship worked in as well. It made all the difference. I wanted to be there. Now, if you go to a meeting that's a big book or primary purpose meeting, I also recommend, when it's a strong literature-based meeting and maybe people are too caught up in themselves, because, part of our disease is that our ego, and, we don't get out of ourselves. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad meeting. You look for the recovery message, and you can't be turned off. If they're working out of the book or out of conference approved literature, then the message is going to be there. So I also always recommend that when you go to a meeting, it's so easy to say, oh, I don't like that. I can't believe that person said that, or I don't like how that, or we stand in judgment. I don't like the way they look. They're nothing like me, whatever. And just really encourage people to look for the similarities, not the differences. What are the similarities? They have a problem with alcohol and they're sober, and, they just shared that they have 20 years. Oh my gosh, I want to have 20 years one day. What are the similarities? Well, there's women here. We're women. Or there's men. here. There's men. And, to be able to really dig in and listen for the good things that people say, the things that you can take away. So I'll often say when I'm doing coaching, okay, so what are, 3 things that you heard that you wanted to take away from that meeting? Or, coach them to the point where they say, I'm going to find these 3 things. And if you're focusing on remembering 3 good things about the meeting, chances are you're not going to get into your car and think about the 3 things that, pardon me, pissed you off that someone said, or that, you just couldn't relate to. That you hear that a lot. Well, I couldn't relate to it. It's a man who, was under a bridge, or a man who got fired from being a CEO. I'm not a CEO. Or a woman who got, lost her whole everything, her job, her, sales team, whatever, because of her drinking. And that's nothing like me. I'm a librarian and I can't relate to people in business. No. What are the similarities? They have a drinking problem and they came to AA to get help and they're sober. And, there's not much more that you need from that.
I think also,
I think that answered your question.
No, absolutely. And the thing is too, I think, Shauna, is that one of the things that I found is that I might not be able to identify with the story or the experience, but I can identify with the feelings that this person's having and the perspective, right? So although they're under a bridge and I wasn't under a bridge, their feeling of powerlessness was the same as my feeling of powerlessness. Right. And I think you have to be open when you go to meetings to listen, actually, to really listen to people. And if it doesn't fit, let it go. I want to jump into this because I think this is important about like picking the right people. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. No, but when you said listening, that's another way indicating the health of a group. If people are sharing just the problems and not sharing the solution, like, okay, I'm really struggling with this, and I talked to my sponsor and we read this part of the book, and so I know that I need to turn it over, and I'm really doing that and trying to do that. If they're just saying this happened and this happened and this happened, my life has gone to shit and blah 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 blah, then they're in the problem and not in the solution. So you're always listening for the solution. And if people are talking and discussing each other's shares, that's called crosstalk or giving advice. That's not a healthy meeting either. We share from our experience. I went through my experience. My experience was this, and this is what I learned from it. And I'm still really struggling, but I'm here. I'm showing up every day. So
yeah, absolutely. And unless it is an actual crosstalk meeting, and shout out to the Burbank group. I used to go to a men's crosstalk and it was an actual crosstalk meeting. You're absolutely right. One of the things that I wanted to dive into is how to set up your meeting schedule to be able to find your home group. One of the blessings that I had, Shauna, is I had a phenomenal sponsor. Shout out to Kevin and his wife, Christy, who really saved my ass. And I was in San Francisco and I wasn't really given a choice about what meetings I could go to. They told me once I got a sponsor what meetings I was going to go to. Now, for me, that was perfect because my ideas got me in there and I needed to have enough humility. And I was like, I don't want to go to the Merchant Marine building, in San Francisco with the average age was like 95 and sit and do a big book study. But he knew that was the place that I was going to get the most, right? So there was a big book study that I had to do every week. There was a home group. And then there was like meetings that he went to that he knew that I would see him there twice a week, right? And then I could pick one. Then I could pick a meeting that I wanted to go to, right? And that, which was great for me because I was just a knucklehead in my 20s who really needed to stay sober and had no plan. And his ability to be able to serve it to me like that for me to be able to receive it was great, Shauna, because like I find that a lot of the times, if you can pick even a group of people who have more time that are invested in you staying sober, they will pick for you meetings. Why don't you try this out? Why don't you try that out? And just following their direction is where I've gotten most of the blessings in the 12-step group.
And we have to take some response. So if you don't have a group of people that are telling you which meeting or recommending, we have to take some personal responsibility as well. Don't forget, a lot of people in AA have come into AA or drank because they had social anxiety or social issues, and or they're, whatever, they continue to feel shy, and they might not come out and say, oh, hey, welcome to AA, and then here's some other meetings I go to. We have to take our own responsibility too and ask. So if there are people who are talking about the solution and they're, what I would say, happy, joyous, free, the problems come along and they seem to manage them well, they've got great serenity, I would go up to them and say, what other meetings do you go to? What meetings would you suggest? But I love what your sponsor said. I want you to go to a step meeting. I want you to do my suggestion is a step meeting, a big book study, a speaker meeting, and then a meditation meeting, and, find those. And here are some groups that I would suggest. I think that's great. Like I know a meeting where I live is a great meeting for women. It's a women's meeting, and a lot of young moms are in there, but there's also a lot of moms with grandchildren. So you have both ends of the spectrum of sobriety, of types of women who have been through it. And well, obviously everyone's been through it, but at different stages of their life. And it's a big book on one night or one morning, and a step on the other, or a speaker meeting once a month. And so I always recommend that to my sponsees that fit in with that demographic, either demographic, the younger or the older, because there's such great sobriety in that, and such great recovery in that. It kind of hits all the boxes. And
exactly.
So far, I've had really good feedback from it.
Yeah, you know what? I think one of the things too is finding not just what people say regarding the groups too, is look at actually what they do. I think one of the big blessings for me is I was around people who were judges and doctors and all kinds of stuff, right? Like look at what they actually do. Do they show up every Saturday like clockwork? It's so funny that I see a lot of times people in 12-step groups that they'll say, well, hey, I really want to get married, and I want to have kids, and I want to have a career, and I want to do all this other stuff. But they hang around people who are unemployed, who have a lot of time, that aren't really working a program, right? That look cool maybe, but aren't really doing it, right? And eventually what happens is they just get turned off for those people, whereas there's a whole other group of the people that might not be as sexy as the package, but actually are doing it. I was always told, it's like when you pick a sponsor and when you pick a home group, make sure that there's people in there that are a couple of cycles ahead of you in what you want to experience. So if you're unemployed and you want to get a career, are there 2 or 3 guys in there that actually have careers, that are actually showing up every day and doing it? Are there people that are married and have kids in there? Right? So because so much, I believe, of the power of 12 steps is modeling, like what Tony Robbins said. It's modeling what other people have done to stay sober and be productive.
Well, that's just it. And, you and I have discussed on another podcast, I can't remember which one, but, stick with the winners. Surround yourself with people, like you just said, you want to be like, that you want to emulate, that they have what you want, because we're also, subconsciously, we're taking that all in. If you are unemployed and you hang out with all the unemployed people that are just sitting around at a coffee shop, chances are you're not going to be challenged in your own life. That is, they might be okay with it. But you might not realize, but they might be living off a trust fund. They don't have to be employed, so they can just loll in the Florida sunshine and be like, whatever. You just never know. But for me, I wanted to get and stay sober, that I had to make friends, make time with the women who had strong sobriety. They might not have long sobriety, but they have strong. It's not the days in your recovery, it's the recovery in your days, because some people get it and they work it and work it and work it, and they're able to have a life that is serene, that they are able to match all that calamity and the chaos has been minimized because they approach it differently. I could not spend my time with the people who were like me, chronically relapsing, because it just gave me an ability to rationalize my way out and go, well, so-and-so did it, or Joni did it. And, she ended up going back to meetings. Oh my gosh. No, I needed to really stick with the people who were, like you said, a couple cycles ahead of me or many cycles ahead of me, so that I could get what they have by watching them and being with them.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that are maybe listening to this that are thinking about trying out AA, NA, Cocaine Anonymous, any of the 12-step groups, it might be saying, well, how, Shauna, Damon, how do I actually join the group? Right. It's like, how do I join the group? Do I have to sign anything? Do I have to, right? Because I've had people do it. Just to clarify, Shauna, people just have to show up to these groups consistently and just participate. Right. That is all you really have to do.
Yeah, just show up, get to know them. They'll say, if you'd like to join us and become a member of this home group, almost every group will say that. Just see one of the home group members after the meeting. Home group members, can you raise your hand? That's always a good way to find someone to go up and talk to after the meeting. Oh, I see you raised. And you can ask, okay, what does it mean to be a member of the home group? Well, we want you, we'd like you to come to the business meetings. Those are decisions that are made about the group. There are service positions and you can get right in. I was newly sober and I got the position of greeter. I know that surprises you and would surprise anyone that I was the greeter, but I was newly sober, but and that helped me to get there early, because I had to get there before everybody to greet everybody and welcome people in, and be the face of the group. And, because I'm so shy and quiet, it was very difficult for me. No, I'm kidding. No, I think y'all know I love it. Definitely not shy and quiet. But even that didn't keep me sober, Damon, being the greeter.
Yeah.
I was the greeter, but I wasn't working. So I had the service going, but I didn't have my recovery base. I wasn't working. I picked a sponsor who never opened up the big book with me. Mm-hmm. And that was a problem for me, because I really needed the solution as it's written in the book. So that was, for me, there was a gap still, and I ended up picking up again, because you can't stay sober on service. You can't stay sober on fellowship. Got to stay sober on recovery. And then the others add into it. They enhance your experience.
Before we conclude this episode, I think maybe what we should do is also cover traditional AA and NA and kind of what I'm going to call new age AA and NA. And there is a difference, Shauna, and what you just talked about, having a sponsor that doesn't have a sponsor, having a home group that doesn't read from the book or have a big book study, right? Like those are much more like, I find the risk is higher, especially for people that come in that don't do it. Like for me, when I'm ever giving any advice, I'd love to hear this too from you, is like when picking a home group, that's a place you're going to show up to and they're going to know that you're coming. Right. If you don't show up, they're going to wonder where you're at. Right. And so like making sure that those, especially in early sobriety, that those groups are focused on the actual program of Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, the actual program. And you see people in there that are actually referring to the program and actually doing the program. And I think that's important, Shauna, because a lot of the times, like you just shared, I see people that go out that say, I gave it a try, I gave 12 steps a try, but it didn't work for me. But they were physically in
the group,
a meeting, but they weren't really doing the program.
Well, because what is the program? The program is to follow the steps 1 through 12. It's a suggested program of recovery. It says it right in the book, which is doing the work for steps 1 through 12. And you're promised to be able to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body if you get through 1 through 12. So I've also heard a lot of people say, I tried AA. I'm like, oh, yeah. How did you did your 4th step and your 5th, and you were sponsoring people, step 12, all the way through praying, meditation. No, I didn't do that. Well, AA isn't going to a few meetings and doing the 1st and 2nd step. It's the suggested program of recovery is all of the 12 steps. So no one can say they tried AA if they didn't get through all of the 12 steps. So if the home group is not talking about, like you said, if the home group is not referring to a step, or, I found this challenging, so I had to do a quick spot check inventory and check out one of my, what was driving me, what was my motivation behind that. And I saw that it was one of my character defects, so I went and I prayed about it and I talked with my sponsor about it. If they're not talking about those kind of things, and they're just talking about, I went to a meeting, and I went to the liquor store after it because in the meeting, this woman was saying that she was out shopping and she just couldn't decide whether to buy these Pottery Barn sheets or these other ones. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to die of this disease. And this woman's talking about Pottery Barn sheets. Where is the solution in this meeting? Needless to say, I haven't been back to that meeting. I never went back to that meeting because I ended up going to the liquor store on the way home because I thought, I don't know why I should go to AA. If that's what they're talking about, that's not helping me stay sober or get and stay sober. Absolutely. I really needed this solution.
Yeah, you have to find places that have a solution. So final thought, Shauna, on this, on picking the right 12-step group for you. What if there's somebody out there that's listening to say, man, you know what? I've tried. It just hasn't worked out for me. What's your answer to that?
Open up meeting guide. Filter on big book group, primary purpose, step group, women's meeting, men's meeting. Or if you're, there are also LGBTQ meetings that are specific to different communities. There's even one here in Toronto that's a Russian speaking meeting because they had such a large community. You can find those groups, but really look for the ones that are strong in the program. And re-listen to this re-listen to this podcast, because we've got a lot of great tips in here. So closing thoughts, primary purpose, big book, solution focused.
Absolutely.
And solution Shauna, meaning the 12 steps.
Great episode. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're going to put links on how you can reach Shauna. Guys, if you have questions about, how to pick a 12-step group, how to do that, we're both open to help anyone.
Absolutely.
For free. So just, hit us up here on the thread here. Make sure to like and follow. Tell a friend who about this episode that might be struggling trying to find a home group. Shauna, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Okay. Thank you, Damon. It's always great to spend time with you.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.